Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to today's video. This episode will guide you through the issues of the Uncanny X-Men published by Marvel Comics in 1984. Issue 178. In the previous episode, we saw how Colossus got attacked by members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The result of this attack is that Colossus is now encased in his own metal skin. No longer flexible, but blistered and cracked to the point where it's about to shatter. One could only imagine what that would do to the person inside. And Kitty has just arrived on the scene, after she could hear Colossus scream in agony from a couple of blocks away. She's in tears and can only look at her boyfriend, trying to think of what she should do right now. She figures there has to be something she can do, and has to warn the other X-Men. She tries to actively reach out to the only person she's able to contact from a distance, and that's Professor Charles Xavier. He is currently in the mansion, being accompanied by Rogue, reading a letter and looking at a picture of Scott and Madeline, who are enjoying their honeymoon. Scott was Xavier's first X-Men, and a longtime leader of the team. Many thought that he would be the team's leader forever. But life isn't always predictable though. Xavier wishes Scott all the best and is happy to read Scott has found his happiness. Scott also writes him that he and Madeline plan on returning to Scott's grandparents as pilots for the airline company, as Xavier suddenly hears Kitty's mental plea for help. He senses her distress and asks her what's going on. She tells him about the ambush by the Brotherhood and that Colossus has been terribly hurt by them. She says that she is safe, but she's not sure about Nightcrawler, who is still at the Lincoln Center with Amanda Sefton. Kitty suspects that the Brotherhood will be attacking him next. Xavier tells Kitty to stay safely where she is, and that he will warn Nightcrawler, while he sends Storm and Wolverine to her aid. He thinks to himself it's probably best if he leaves Rogue out of this, because she used to be a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants herself, and she still considers their leader Mystique her mother. Several meters below the mansion is where the Danger Room is located at. The place where both teams of the X-Men and the New Mutants hone their mutant skills in a simulated environment, both as individuals and as teams. Storm and Wolverine are currently training together. Storm is an elemental and has absolute control over the weather, and Wolverine possesses a fast healing ability but also has metal implants. His entire skeleton is laced with a metal called adamantium, but he also has claws made out of the same metal, which he can extend and retract at will. Storm is flying by Wolverine at high speed and he slashes her cape from her body without even touching her, and he stoically says that it's a piece of cake. She says she will fly faster next time, and Wolverine says that that's the way to get hurt. Storm then says that she likes the risk because that's what makes it fun to her, to which Wolverine responds that she's starting to sound like Yukio, and Storm tells him there's worse role models than her. At that time they both get hailed telepathically by Professor X, who's telling them they have an emergency. Storm asks him if he has already alerted Rogue, and he tells her he would prefer to keep her out of this, since the emergency concerns her former teammates and friends, which might put her loyalties under pressure, and Storm agrees. Xavier communicates that he's not receiving any thought patterns from Colossus, but that does not mean he's dead. He could just be in a deep state of shock instead. He cannot finish his next thought, as he suddenly experiences an intense psionic force, smashing right through his natural defenses and making him cry out. This alerts Rogue, who checks up on him to see if he's alright. He waves it off with saying that it's just a sudden headache, and she asks him if he wants some aspirin, to which he responds that that would be wonderful while he's still recovering. He thinks that this was not an attack but more like a scanning wave, which he guesses is a good thing because whatever it was, he suspects it could have destroyed him with ease. He wonders where it came from and what it was looking for. In the meantime, at the construction site, Kitty is thinking about her usefulness in a fight with the Brotherhood. She comes to the conclusion that the other X-Men would probably be having to look out for her safety, which would distract them. But she cannot just stay here either, regardless of what the professor had told her. She has to do something. She suddenly remembers having read a scientific article written by Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, about some kind of a device which might prove useful. She's just scared that if they get Colossus to revert back to his human form, the cracks in his skin might just prove to be lethal. But that is a worry for later, she thinks. One thing at a time. As she's making her way to the payphone again, she curses her own brain for having too vivid an imagination. which results in her always seeing the worst in a situation. Because not only can Reach Genius help them save Colossus, but the rest of the Fantastic Four might just give them a hand in fighting off the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Her phone call is being answered by the Fantastic Four's mechanical receptionist, who tells Kitty that sadly none of the Fantastic Four's members are in right now. Changing her plans, she makes her way to a taxicab and will try to get her hands on the device herself, hopefully being able to use it on her own. She figures it's worth a shot at the very least. She faces herself inside the taxicab as to not lose any time unnecessarily, and she tells the driver she needs to get to the Baxter building ASAP, because it's a matter of life and death. This of course startles the driver, who thinks himself that no one is going to believe the story back at the garage. Across town, on the Lower East Side, a body is lying cold and still in one of the alleys. This person once had a name, but no one will ever know it. She once had a family too, but she fled from them several years ago, seeking a better life for herself in the Big Apple. But from the looks of her face and the needle tracks on her arms, one can tell that she never reached that goal of a better life. They are a testament of the life she ended up having, and of how that life tragically came to an end. Her lifeless body is being joined in the alley by characters we've come to know as Callisto, Mask and Sunder of the Morlocks. Sunder says to Callisto that even a dog shouldn't have ended up like this kid has. But Callisto tells him that if life was fair, they would not have become Morlocks either. Mask says that even in a utopia, a perfect society, they would be outcast still, because it's in their nature. Callisto agrees. She says they're outcasts not just because they're mutants, but simply because they want to be. And before this night is over, they will have one more addition to their group, she says. She asks Mask if he can work with this specific material, and Mask tells her to just watch her, as he uses his powers on the corpse. His fingers merge with the flesh of the lifeless body, as if the skin is melting and reshaping her face while he's doing so. He says that when he's done, even Pretty Kitty's own parents wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Over at the Lincoln Center, an unaware Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton are enjoying one another by kissing and cuddling. Amanda compliments Kurt, and he asks her why she's stopping, but she tells him that she came here for the ballet, and not to get arrested for public naughtiness. It looks as if they lost track of time because the plaza seems empty. They now wonder what had taken Kitty and Piotr so long. They have already missed the opening, but they will give them just a little bit more time before they start looking for them. Then suddenly, when they look at the sky, they are both astounded by what they're seeing. It's a giant dragon made out of fire, and it's actually shooting a fire blast from his mouth at them. Luckily, Kurt reacts fast and teleports himself and Amanda out of harm's way, resulting in the water from the fountain they were sitting at turning into steam. He tried to teleport both of them to a safe spot on top of the roof of the theater, but unfortunately, Avalanche is standing there, waiting for them. Avalanche then causes the metal and concrete of the building to flow like water, sweeping both Amanda and Kurt off the roof. Kurt tells his girlfriend to try and relax her body, as he will catch her by teleporting to her in midair. He knows that if the Brotherhood is here now, Destiny is most likely with them, and as a precog, she will be aware of where he will teleport to after that. He doesn't like having to run away from a fight, but he will not put Amanda's life at risk here. She asks him who's attacking them and why. So Kurt tells her it's the Brotherhood and that he assumes they are here to settle a score. Unless, he thinks himself, this has something to do with Rogue. At that time, he receives a telepathic nudge from Xavier, who is trying to warn him that he's in immediate danger of an attack. Kurt thanks the professor, even though he had wished the warning had come a little sooner so he could have anticipated their attack. They then get attacked again by the dragon made out of fire, but Amanda uses her magic spells to shield them off from the attack. It's one of the first spells her mother had taught her to defend herself, and Kurt is impressed by this. And so is the Blob, who pretty much falls on top of them out of thin air. Nightcrawler is able to quickly teleport himself away, but Amanda is not as lucky. She gets grabbed by her neck by the Blob, and he tells Nightcrawler to come back to him, or he will snap his girlfriend's neck. Kurt returns and surrenders, and the Blob tells him mockingly that he knew he would see things his way. Nightcrawler tells the Blob to let Amanda go as he promised, but the Blob simply lied. He then gets zapped in the ass by one of Storm's lightning bolts, who tells him to release the both of them if he values his own life. The cavalry has arrived. Storm is carrying Wolverine and he tells her to drop her off, and anywhere's fine. but after that she should stay out of his way because the Blob is his. The Blob, who let go of both the men and Nightcrawler, yells to Destiny that she was supposed to know they would come and asks why she hadn't warned them of their arrival. Pyro says that the Blob does have a point, but Destiny tells them that not all alternative timelines are as clear and certain as they would think they are. She says that sometimes it's better to be silent than to be wrong. She can tell that for the moment Nightcrawler is safe and figures that Mystique will not hold that against her. The Blob tells Destiny to remember which side she's supposed to be on, and to act accordingly, as he grabs a piece of concrete and hurls it in the air at Storm and Wolverine. But Storm uses her powers to return it back to him, and it doesn't hurt him one bit. It's merely a distraction. No force has been found yet that can actually hurt the Blob, or to move the immovable object if he doesn't want to be moved. At that same time, Kitty has arrived at the Baxter building. She now realizes that this was probably a stupid idea, because this specific building is probably the one with the best security technology in the whole of New York City. And she's not really the thiefy kind of person either, but with Pyotr's life at stake, she doesn't really have an alternative. She pays the taxi driver, thanks him for the ride and fades out of the cab, leaving the driver still in shock with what he has just witnessed. Kitty then realizes that she could have just asked the professor to get into contact with Reed, and ask him for help to gain access to the building safely. Something which she hadn't thought of before because she had been rushing so fast and had been too upset over Colossus' state right now. But when she tries to hail Xavier telepathically, there is no response. So much for that idea. She then thinks that it might well be that he can't even answer, because Rogue might have done something to him, turning out to be the Judas they had thought from the start she would be. But there's nothing she can do about that right now. She fades through the front door of the building and elevator doors, and goes all the way up to the floor just below the section of the building which belongs to the Fantastic Four. As she steps out of the elevator, she is right in front of the receptionist robot she was just talking to minutes before. The receptionist points out that she's making an unauthorized entry onto the premises of the Fantastic Four, and wants her to state her business and then leave. It's either that or appropriate security measures will be taken. Kitty is well aware of the effect her phasing powers have on electrical devices, and tells the robot what her business here is, apologizing while she short-circuits the robot by phasing through her. This will buy her some time as she makes her way through the floors of the section, all the way up to the 3rd level, where the laboratory is located. She's being a bit more careful now, as to not cause any damage to important devices or experiments with the phasing powers. And while Kitty is getting closer to her objective, the robot assistant is taking countermeasures to the short circuit in the systems, resulting in initiating a security alert due to the presumed hostile breach, with no short-term information on the perpetrator. Back at the Lincoln Center, the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are now engaged in a full-fledged battle with one another, with Destiny overseeing all possible outcomes. But despite how overpowered precognition might be, relaying that information in time to her teammates isn't always possible, as seems the case with Nightcrawler and Avalanche's battle. Regardless of Destiny knowing that Nightcrawler is going to teleport out of the way of Avalanche's punch, and even knowing where he will appear again, Avalanche cannot react fast enough to do something about it, and Nightcrawler is able to punch him instead. The Blob is more successful in countering Wolverine's attack, who bounces right off the Blob's body as he tries to attack him. Storm is trying her best to deal with Pyro, who attacks her with a flame blast directly. Storm's winds are not effective, but she seems to be able to drown the flames out with a monsoon. Pyro is having a hard time with being able to keep himself standing upright with Storm's counterattack, and is overcome by the sheer force of Storm's elemental attack and control over nature's raw power. Kitty in the meantime is fascinated by what she's seeing in Reed Richards' laboratory, and she thinks to herself how she would like a guided tour in the place. Or if he would even take her on as an apprentice. She immediately is aware of how weird it would be to ask him that, since she's basically breaking and entering in right now. She's very alert because she feels she's about to get zapped any minute now, but she has found what she was looking for. She picks up the device and makes her way to the rooftop of the building, knowing she had better not return the way she came, because that would just be asking for trouble. She hopes that Professor Xavier will understand what she's done, and that he will be able to explain the situation to the Fantastic Four. She's considering being willing to babysit for their son Franklin to make amends for what she's doing right now. But she feels like a creep and thinks about how she would feel if the situation was reversed and they broke into her house instead. She has to focus now, because she's going to use her powers to pull off one of her newer tricks, namely walking on the air molecules while phasing. If she loses her concentration and falls, she will not survive the experience. But she has to do this, because if she stays, she will get captured and that will not do anyone any good. She's trying to put her mind in the right mental state, tries to concentrate to make the airwalk. But suddenly she hears something behind her, not sure what it is and thinks it's a security widget of some kind. But when she turns around, she gets pushed off the rooftop. While this is happening, Avalanche is about to unleash his powers on Nightcrawler again, moving the ground below them, causing a tidal wave of concrete, but before he does, Nightcrawler quickly teleports him right in front of the Blob. And where Avalanche wanted to attack Nightcrawler, his teammate and his girlfriend, he now actually buries the Blob in concrete and is not able to stop it. Wolverine jumps on top of the Blob and pushes his knuckles right under his chin, threatening to pop his claws, asking him if he will give up already. And Wolverine says that he's fine with it either way, but he gives up anyway. Nightcrawler is surprised that the Blob took this loss so well, and the Blob tells him that he's a practical man. You win some, you lose some. It balances out in the end. And besides that, he says, they didn't lose, they surrendered. Storm notices that maybe this was a little bit too easy, as if the Brotherhood didn't really care about winning this battle. And Wolverine asks where Kitty and Colossus are. The Blob then tells him that they didn't really care about the girl and that the Russian was just a bonus. They were never after the X-Men's hides. This was all just a diversion. He tells them to go ahead and send them all back to prison. They don't care. They've been there before, and they will just simply break out again eventually. But the X-Men though, they will have to find themselves a new teacher. Either that, or find a way to raise a current one from the dead. Over at the mansion, Xavier is still struggling with the psychic interference. He does not seem to be able to regain contact with the X-Men, ever since Storm and Wolverine joined the battle. At first, he thought it was a residue from the psychic encounter from earlier, but that's no longer the case. He has sensed this kind of interference before, but he can't quite put his finger on it. At that moment, Rogue walks in with a cup of herbal tea, and tells Xavier he looks pretty rough. Xavier thanks her for bringing him the tea, and she tells him it's her pleasure. She asks him if there's anything else she can do for him, but he tells her he's fine for the moment. And then it suddenly hits him. He has encountered this interference pattern before, a couple of months ago in Washington. Back when Mystique used an inhibitor to make sure that Xavier wouldn't be able to use his psych ropes, so she would be able to get close enough to him. At that precise moment, Rogue reveals a gun she had tucked away under a towel and shoots Xavier from up close. While she's amazed at Xavier's ability to still sense her attack at the very last instant, her shot wasn't able to kill him instantly. It only wounded him, resulting in him being unconscious and helpless. And then, another Rogue steps in the room, because of Xavier screaming out when he got shot. The Rogue that shot him wasn't Rogue at all, but was Mystique instead. She then reveals herself to Rogue and tells her she has come here to take her home with her. Rogue asks her if she's killed Xavier, and Mystique responds that she hasn't just yet. She tells Rogue to go pack her things while she finishes off her business here. Rogue doesn't understand and asks Mystique why she's doing this, and she tells her that she's doing this for her. She wasn't going to let Xavier steal her daughter away from her and let him get away with that. Rogue then tells her that he didn't kidnap her. She thought that Mystique would understand, that she came here of her own free will. Mystique then asks her how she would know, because Xavier might as well be making her believe or make her do anything with his telepathic abilities. Rogue tells Mystique that she will not allow her to kill Xavier, because it's wrong, and Mystique just looks at her, and tells her to step aside. Now Rogue is getting angry with her, asking her why she doesn't ever listen to her. She asks her if she really thinks so little of Rogue, that she sooner believes her to be brainwashed and forced to do something, rather than think that she's actually taking responsibility for her own life and accept those consequences. Mystique then asks her why she left her then, and if she doesn't love her. Rogue responds that of course she does. She tells Mystique that she's more of a mother to her than she ever had, and that this has nothing to do with love. She simply can't help Rogue with the issues she's struggling with. She tells Mystique that her powers are out of control. She can't touch anyone and she can't handle it anymore. It's driving her insane. Mystique is shocked to hear the despair in Rogue's voice like this and can only look at her. Rogue continues by telling her that she had spent months trying to kill the mutant Dazzler because she hated her. Because Dazzler was a mutant with all the things she wanted. She had lovers and friends, things that Rogue could never have. She continues telling Mystique that Xavier was her last resort, And if Mystique truly loves her and she wants what's best for her, she will respect her decision and let her stay. Mystique asks her what she will do when all this is over, when she has to choose between the X-Men and the Brotherhood. When she has to choose between Xavier and her, what will she do then? Rogue tells her that at least then she has a choice, which is more than what she has now. She tells her that she still remembers that when she was a kid, Mystique would hold her, protecting her from badness and nightmares. But she can't do that now anymore. She doesn't dare to. She tells her that she just wants to be normal now, and at the very least have a chance at being normal. She asks Mystique if that's too much to ask for. A little bit later, Mystique broadcasts an holographic message for the X-Men, while standing over Xavier's body. She has a fairly simple proposition, namely her colleague's freedom in exchange for their mentor's life. Nightcrawler asks how they will know if he isn't really dead already, but Storm tells them they don't really have an alternative, so she tells Mystique that they accept the trade-off. The Blob just enjoys how all of this played out with them just walking off like this, especially since they were able to nail Colossus, who is still encased in his own hardened and cracked skin. Amanda says that the Blob would not be glowing like that if her mother had taught her one of her death spells. But even though Kurt tells her that he hates the Blob's guts, he's glad that she didn't. Wolverine threatens Blob to keep looking over his shoulder because sooner or later the Blob will see him there. And he adds that the Blob should not expect to see much more after that. Destiny then tells the X-Men that she's seeing a chronal interface between Kitty Pryde and the Baxter Building, and that they would do best as to not ignore a warning. She sees an ultimate darkness, and a fear suddenly silenced, and then oblivion. This warning coming from one of their foes leaves the X-Men somewhat baffled, until they hear a broadcast over the radio from one of the police cars. There have been reports coming in of a jumper at the Baxter Building, with a description as follows: Caucasian female, age undetermined but young, with a probable fatality. Thanks for watching this video and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, because it really helps me out in growing the channel and being able to produce more videos like this one. See you next episode.